Hola. Hey, hello everybody. My name is Miguel Andrés, and I'm in the city of Badi. Before starting, I wanted to take a minute to thank again Chauma, Paula, and the whole team for this awesome organization. Really, they've done a great job. I'm really honored to be here today. Yeah. I hope you guys got some coffee. I'll try to keep you awake. I'll tell you this story probably is a bit different than the previous presentations. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what I did in the Silicon Valley, Google, and in particular trying to shed some light in terms of how projects are conceived in these large kind of tech companies, yeah? Or at least tell you my story. So maybe a bit briefly, because it's part of my story, I want to put things in context. I did my background is in computer science, and I did my studies back in Argentina, where I basically had a few tech jobs while I was studying, and I created an IT company. But then towards the end of my career, of my studies, I decided I wanted to move abroad, kind of to try to discover new cultures and new languages, and figure out basically going to Europe to do a PhD was a good idea. So I got into the world of research, and I spent basically 4 years in the Netherlands and then 2 in Paris, doing PhDs in postdocs in computer security. Then towards the end of that, even though I enjoyed a lot research, I figured out it was still too abstract. I wanted to do things that were closer to the user, to real people. I wanted to basically have a larger impact in people's life. And I figured Google was a good opportunity for me to through my work, basically do things that people actually use and improve their lives. So I moved to Google, to the Silicon Valley in 2012. And there I worked in a few teams. First in the Google Identity team, where I was leading some security-related efforts. And then in 2016, almost, I moved to Google Pay. And then we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. There I was, when I left Google, I was a tech lead engineer manager in Google. And I moved to Barcelona, to Badi, a few months ago. All right, so the story I'm going to tell you a little bit about is Google Pay Transit, which is this application to use public transportation with your mobile device. And I'll tell you basically how it was conceived from 0 to 1, what I would say, from basically the conception of the idea to execution and launch. To put things a bit in context, this was part of what we call in Google 20% projects, right? And it's a pretty cool concept, which basically allows, it was created by Google's founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. And the basic idea is to allow people to spend up to 20% of their time working on things that they found interesting, right? It needs to be company related. Of course, you cannot go and say, I want to do a chorizo factory, but as long as it's something that Google could, or in this case, Google or any other company, could kind of align with their business goals, is fair play. And then in Google, we had actually several large projects that were created through this kind of framework, right? Starting by Gmail, I think also within Google Maps, basically all the live traffic information was also part of a 20% project. Google Talk, Google News, Chromecast as a project as well. All basically came, and it's interesting because these projects come from the bottom up, right? Instead of being top down, the boss tells you what to do. These are ideas that employees actually thought about and figured it would be interesting to invest some effort and think through these things, right? And then basically that's the same framework that I used to launch this with many other people, of course, eventually, this Google Pay Transit app. And to give a bit of context, this app basically is within Google Pay. So Google Pay is an application that allows you to put your credit cards and pay using your phone. You tap and pay. If you have an iPhone device, it's called Apple Pay. It's kind of the same concept. So within Google Pay, we created this vertical that is used for public transportation. Basically allows you to put your public transportation card, just like this one, which exists in pretty much every city, where you have a balance, or you have a weekly pass, monthly pass tickets, right? You can put it in your mobile device and use your mobile device to ride public transportation. And nowadays, to jump to the end of the story, is we are about 70 people working in the project globally and across different functions, right? We have, of course, the tech area, but we also have product, marketing, business, and many other functions. And I started the project. I'm going to tell you now the beginning of the story, yeah? So basically, when I joined the Google Pay team back in 2016, I figured since what we do in Google Pay is enable people to pay, and we want to do as let's say as an app, is bring more user engagement in the form of active daily users, as well as amount of transactions that they do. I figure basically the public transportation is a perfect vertical for us to explore, right? Because we have billions of people riding public transportation every week around the globe, and they do it pretty much all the time, right? So multiple times a day. So basically, it was certainly 100% aligned with the goals of our team. And I also thought it was actually pretty useful for users, right? It's not only about doing something good for the company, but I figured I will use this stuff. If I were able to put my public transportation card on my phone, I will use it, right? I remember when I was living in Paris, I would go, at the beginning of every month, I would have to line up and spend 45 minutes standing in a line just to renew my monthly pass, right? That will allow me to ride public transportation. And everybody will be playing with their phones, just killing time. I figure we can do better than that, right? So when I joined, I thought we can focus on this. So I would like to at least have a look at the idea. And I talked to my manager, which at the time was the director of Google Pay, director of engineering. And I proposed basically to spend some time looking into this, right? He was pretty skeptical at first, but basically gave me a green light to go and check it out, because it was, even though it seems pretty difficult at the beginning, and I'll tell you why in a second, the motivation was big, right? If we managed to get this right, it could be really impactful. So basically, once I got the green light, I started doing some research. And really, I didn't have anything concrete to start with. So what I did is to start downloading material from the internet, trying to figure out how does this technology work, right? And basically found some specifications and started studying, understanding also the ecosystem, the different players, the business models, and trying to basically get an idea in terms of, can we actually do this using a mobile device instead of a physical car, right? So which was the first question, is this feasible? And then this from the tech perspective as well from a business perspective. Because if we wanted to actually do this, we needed to get partners to actually partner with us, to allow us to run basically the technology that they have in these smart cards, which is basically a chip running an algorithm, to run it in a mobile device. And in addition of being able to solve it, we needed to figure out, is there a way to scale this, right? Even if we can solve it, if we need to go transit station by transit station, or let's say city by city to enable public transportation, it might be very difficult to scale globally. So basically, I came up with an idea to my manager, and I told him, look, I think from a technical perspective, we can do it. These are the challenges, and then these are kind of the main players in the ecosystem. I was lucky enough because actually, even though there are thousands of transit agencies out there, this technology is basically pretty much owned by a Dutch company that has 80% of the market share, right? So I figure if we manage to get those guys to sign up with us, we'll be able to launch more cities around the globe. And the next step was basically, let's talk to them. I think this will work, but I need to validate it with them. They're the experts in the area, and to see if they're going to be willing to let us run the technologies on mobile devices. So the next step was really validating those ideas, right? As I mentioned, there were some challenges. Security was the most important one, even though maybe it's not intuitive, but when you go to a transit station and you tap your card, everything happens offline, right? So you need to be able to run things with an offline infrastructure, and you need to be able to hold, basically, in these cards, you have the actual balance or the tickets, right? So you need to be able to hold that information securely in a mobile device, which Android devices are not necessarily built for security in many aspects, right? And then performance was another key challenge. We need to make sure that we can do this fast, right? Users need to be able to get across within 500 milliseconds. So basically going from this physical card, which is built to be fast and to only do one thing, doing the same with a mobile device that is doing many things at the same time, and it's not built for that, was also a pretty difficult challenge. Anyway, so I started talking to this company, and initially to the tech team, and they were awesome. They were also pretty excited about the idea and happy because basically they built these algorithms, and they were happy about the idea of being able to deploy their algorithms in 1 billion Android devices, right? So that went pretty smoothly, and we basically agreed that it's technically feasible. We did a few adjustments, but basically the idea was sound. And then we needed to move kind of to the business discussion. And that actually took a while. In the meantime, I basically got some help. At the time, I was still kind of working alone. So help from a PM that was willing to invest 20% of the time. And I also got my manager to approve an intern to build a prototype. So basically, the business folks continued the discussion. It took a while until they find a solution, signed the contracts, partnership agreements, and so on. And then by the time I had already built a prototype, I started pitching the idea to Google executives. And the Google executives and actually also transit agencies, which were the third wheel in this story, right? So we needed to convince transit agencies to want to launch with us. But that was actually the easy part, because we were bringing actually innovation to a space that hasn't really had much innovation in a while. And indeed, they were being cannibalized by the Ubers and Cabifys out there, which by means of technology were actually bringing a lot of users out of the public system. So we had basically all the pieces aligned, and I finally was in a position to talk to leadership and ask for resources to build a team and launch this. And they were also very excited, so that went also really well. And in the end, I got the headcount, and we started creating a cross-functional team. So we had to initially figure out what kind of roles do we need, how many people, how recruiting the team, right, kicking off the effort. We ended up building a pretty good team, pretty large team of engineers, product, design, business, marketing. It was very cross-functional. Actually, the part of recruiting was also quite easy. I think the fact that you're building something that people understand and people will love to use make it very easy for you to get people excited and to get people to join the team. Right? So in the end, I had more people that wanted to join than I could actually hire initially. Anyway, so basically, once we had the team, we started with the implementation phases. First, we had also a pretty large challenge in terms of the product, right? Because we were doing something that was never done before. There was no reference. We had the challenge to figure out how to visualize these things in your mobile device. So you can see basically the different tickets that you have. And if you have multiple tickets, manage them and maybe buy a new ticket or refresh a ticket that is expired. So once we had the product defined with the designs, we had the people implementing front-end, back-end. We had also integrations with partners. The partner that I mentioned that owns the technology were acting as sort of as a virtual hub that will give us digital versions of these cars, right? So we need to integrate with them. That were working in India, basically a different zone. And then we also did integrations with Google services, like Google Maps, in a way that if you go to Google Maps and you say in a city that we have launched, and you say, I want to go from point A to point B, you can actually buy your ticket with your mobile device. Buy it and use your mobile device to ride. And then also with Android Key Store in order to enhance security. So basically, we spent quite a lot of time implementing this. It took, I think, about 7 months of implementation. And then the other part that I wanted to highlight was testing. We need to be very careful with this because really, if you somehow screw up the readers in the transit agencies, you can literally bring a city to its knees, right? Because basically, if you stop the public transportation, you are in trouble, right? So we had to think a lot through how do we actually test our solution to make sure we're not breaking things. We had initially went to labs to do some testing, and indeed we brought down some of the readers, so we learned a lot. Then we actually hired people to go to remote cities where we're launching and test the solution, to make sure things were working fast and reliably. And then we use, again, the next step, I would say, our internal resources, Googlers, right? We're a 90,000 people company. So whenever we're launching, for instance, in Melbourne, which we launched recently, we'll just deploy the solution internally to Googlers, and people will try it and give it feedback. And in some cases, as well in Melbourne, we'll also have like external pilots where a few thousand people will sign up to try out the app, basically before doing a full public launch, which typically lost the system a lot more. So basically, we did a bunch of testing, and we learned a lot. We fixed a few things, and we eventually got to launch, which was super, super exciting for me and for the whole team. And we launched initially in Vegas in 2019. Then we had a deployment in UK, Japan, Australia, and right now we're kind of in the process, or Google Pay, I would say, now that I left, is in the process of expanding basically globally to many more markets, as well as increasing or improving the functionality of the application, right? Once you're able to digitize all the information in here, you can do a lot of cool things, like tell users, hey, if you had purchased last month, based on your consumption last month, if you had purchased a monthly pass, you would have saved some money, right? Or maybe you know that you go every day from point A to point B. Remember that this week, that station is going to be closed. Or remember to step out from the metro, next station is yours, right? So building new cool features that are added value for people just by digitizing the physical cars. And okay, that was my Google Pay transportation project, and I thought it was cool to kind of share because it's one of those things that that basically it grows from employees, right? From everybody down in the company. If you give the right tools, basically, I think the engineers or people working on product or any kind of role that are in the day-to-day can have very good ideas to bring innovation to the company. So it's just a matter of giving the opportunity and creating some processes around this to enable this kind of innovation. And I think Kay discussed this morning also some very cool concepts. So this is a different approach to enable innovation in your companies. Let's see. I also wanted to talk a little bit about Badi, right? So I joined the company recently, but I have a few things to say. Maybe especially why I joined. So what is Badi? In case you don't know it, it's a marketplace. It's a real estate marketplace where people can actually list their rooms, and you can have people looking for rooms reaching out and making a secure transaction through the platform, right? So basically, in a way to describe it, it's like Airbnb, but for short-term rentals, right? Long-term rentals. Airbnb is mostly vacational. Badi is long-term rentals. So if you're looking for a place to live long-term, Badi is the way to go. And then we have also, in addition to long-term, another important difference with respect to Airbnb, which is that we have a very strong social component, right? So the app basically creates profiles for people looking for partners to live. And then we use AI to connect the right profiles, right? So people can live with other folks that are compatible with their personality. In terms of the mission, which I think is very meaningful, and probably one of the main reasons why I joined Badi, I do believe it's doing something very meaningful through technology. In this case, it's making city living accessible for everybody, everywhere, right? And here's the idea, or the current situation, I would say, where we have the population growing faster and faster, and there's this strong tendency for folks to move to urban cities, right? And then at some point, the infrastructure is not able anymore to absorb so many people, and that's where actually I think we're coming up with a pretty meaningful solution. Cool. In terms of challenges as CTO, I joined recently, as I said, but I wanted to share a few things. There's a few technical aspects and a few non-technical things. On the non-technical side, which I have spent a lot of time over the last few months, I would say I would like to highlight two things, right? One is growth, team growth. How do you actually hire the right people, which I think is part of the reason why we are all here. But not only hiring people, but it's also creating the right structure for those folks to enter the company and to be productive and to be happy. So a lot of work on that side. The other aspect is what I say focus on prioritization, right? So Badi is a startup, and as many startups, we have limited resources, so it's key, and it can be the determining factor between success and failure. Really finding out which are the right efforts to focus on is super important, right? And this ties a bit with the topic of OKRs that Mark discussed this morning. which we have done, and we're trying to get better at it. Defining our North Star metric, so we can also disregard some projects that are really interesting but not related to what we need to focus on right now. So a lot of effort in that direction as well. On a more technical aspect, I would say a few things. One is scale. We are right now in a few countries, in 4 or 5 countries, and we plan to extend to many more. Some of them in Europe, some of them outside Europe. So this, of course, the infrastructure challenge of how do you expand to new markets while being able to scale in terms of number of people that you can serve, as well as reliability, performance, and so on, right? So for that, we are just looking at our infrastructure and making some strategic changes to be able to support this expansion. Payments. Payments is also key, I would say, for most marketplaces. We invest a lot in this. I think it's one of also the main added values of the platform, right? Because we enable users to actually pay through our system, and then they actually can get their money back in case when they go to the place, they don't find what they were expecting, both for people that are offering a room as well as people that are renting the room. So we invest a lot of time on this, and as we continue expanding, there's also a challenge that the payments can also be quite localized. Different markets have different ways to pay, and we need to invest time and resources in enabling all those different mechanisms for payments. The last one, well, whenever you support payments, I guess, is a fraud component. In particular, in real estate, there's a lot of money involved, a lot of money changing hands. So we have, in any real estate marketplace or real estate company, we have fraud. So we spend quite a lot of time fighting that, right? And really the challenge is how to fight fraud in a way that scales. So as we basically continue expanding 10x, 100x, we cannot have people looking at every single log. So we are trying to use AI and NLP to try to stop fraudsters, or at least identify some potential fraudsters, and then we do some manual revision, right? The same with quality. It's very difficult to keep high quality in a marketplace when everybody can, on their own, upload, let's say, rooms, right? You can have duplicate rooms, you can have rooms that are not yours, or rooms whose description is not fair, it's not right. So figuring out the way to have some sort of quality control on the content in the marketplace is another aspect that we're investing a lot, and we'll continue to do so. Having said that, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say, and I wanted to make sure also we have some time for questions. Thanks a lot.
We still have time, so I don't know if you want to take any questions. Questions, people? Any brave ones?
I know after lunch is tough.
Oh yes, especially dim lights. Now they put the lights on. People are like, oh my God. Come on, questions. Not from you. You know how it goes. So you know.
He's not allowed.
You know where everything is broken, so that's fine. No question, guys? No? No one? We're a CTO summit. You have a top CTO, and we're not asking questions. There we go.
So my name is Jerry. I'm with GitLab, and one of the questions that I get a lot is, how do you differentiate yourself from GitHub? So I guess my question for you, based on what you've talked about, is how do you differentiate yourselves from, I guess, Airbnb?
How do we differentiate ourselves from Airbnb? Fair enough. I would say I get that question a lot as well. I would say two key aspects is, one, Airbnb is mostly vacational, right? So 99+% of Airbnb bookings are for 1 month or less, and our basically market target is 1 month or more. Basically, we don't do short term. And the second aspect is really the social component, right? If you're looking for a place to spend a weekend, you don't care perhaps if you live with somebody that is not a full match with you. If you're going to live with somebody for real for a year, it can make a big difference to live with somebody that you get along versus somebody that basically is not a good match, right? So we invest, I would say our platform is pretty good at matching people's personality and making sure you end up finding the right person out there, which in general is thousands of people. So really that's a big challenge to solve, and that's where AI is helping us a lot. Yeah.
So you're a dating app, basically.
Basically, a dating app.
Dating.
We used to.
So
Where
Tinder for rooms, right?
I think it's working both ways, huh?
I'll leave it there. You could do a spin-off there, different version.
We try to serve our users the best we can, right? Whatever the needs are.
Careful, that's dangerous. Anyway, any other questions, guys? We can take one more.
I think over there.
Over there.
Hi, thank you for a good presentation. Would like to know more than how you differentiate from Airbnb. To me, sounds more similar to Spot a Home, this company, and this similar long-term renting space start to be quite inflationate now across Europe. England is quite advanced right now in this market space. Rentify or this kind of companies popping every day. So what makes you different?
Fair enough. I think it's another question. Spot.com, I think operational, their model is a bit different, right? They need to go and basically, as far as I understand, right? I haven't really done a deep assessment there, but in order for an owner, a homeowner, to rent a place, you need to have somebody on the Spot.com team, from the Spot.com team, to make a video, right, and upload it. Which, in terms of scalability, I think that's a challenge, right? Then I would say the other aspect, I will come back to the social thing, right? I believe what we offer in general is co-living. I think we make co-living a lot easier, right? And really that's a way to solve the problem that we have with cities, right? What we really are having troubles to keep up with so many people moving to large cities, and that basically leads to higher prices. Our solution is to share a space, whereas their solution, as far as I understand, is mostly renting a full flat, right? And then since we focus on sharing a space, we have the social component. That again, we try to do our best to make sure you find people looking for a housemate or homemate, find the right person. Makes sense?
Okay, it's actually, I was thinking that whole co-living thing, that now it's becoming a thing, and We Live and all these other companies doing co-living. So maybe you have an angle there. It's not just, for regular homes, but big buildings that do co-living. Anyway, we're actually out of time now, so please, un gran aplauso. Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias.